Hello, we're continuing our reviews on the Candyman series with Candyman 3, Day of the Dead. Now this, of course, is the third film in the Candyman franchise, which started with the original film from 1992, which was based on the short story The Forbidden by Clive Barker. Now, this one is co-written and directed. It's written by, how do you say their names again?
Okay, I'm pretty sure you say them, they're pronounced like Al Septine and Turi Mayer or Turi Meyer, one of those.
Yeah, and these guys also wrote Leprechaun 2, which is actually my favorite of the Leprechaun franchise. And the director of this movie, which is Turi Mayer or Meyer, he also directed a movie a few years prior to this called, I think it was called Sleep Stalker or something, which wasn't a very good movie. Yeah, I'm gonna say Candyman 3, Day of the Dead is easily the worst film in the franchise, and I'm gonna be honest, this is one of the worst fucking horror films I ever had to sit through. You and me were rewatching this, I was like, this is fucking boring as shit!
Not only is it boring, it's also so cheap looking. Everything about it is just so cheap and phony.
Well, it was a direct-to-video film. It feels direct-to-video. You can tell it's direct-to-video. I also think a lot of the film is shot almost like a softcore kind of movie, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the music during the opening credits, we don't get that amazing, ominous Philip Glass score anymore. We get this porno-type music now, I would say.
Yeah, this is a piss-poor fucking movie. Yeah. This is a really, 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 really shitty fucking film.
In fact, I mean, I rewatched it yesterday, and it was still pretty terrible. But I remember when we rewatched it about a month ago or so, I actually fell asleep towards the end.
Yes, I remember.
I mean, to be fair, it was pretty late, and I was tired, but I guess I just didn't feel this movie was worth staying awake for.
So, the plot of Candyman 3 is it follows the character of Caroline, who is the daughter of Annie, who is the main character of the second movie. Basically, in the second movie, you followed this character named Annie, who you found out was the great-great-granddaughter of Daniel Robitaille, the man who Candyman was when he was human, and basically, in that movie, you found out that Annie was pregnant, and she had her daughter at the end of the film, and you saw, because at the end of the film, there's sort of a flash forward to a few years later, and you saw her daughter, Caroline, as a little girl. That little girl is the main character of this movie, which means that this film, they don't say it, but technically this is taking place in the future.
Yeah, except it still feels like 1999.
Yeah.
It looks like 1999, too.
Yeah, but they say this is actually taking place in 2020.
They did not think that through, did they?
I don't think they did. I don't think they actually thought the timeline out at all. To be fair, this is not the only sequel to do that, because we recently reviewed the Fly movies, and Return of the Fly, which came out only a year after the first one. Technically, that's in the future, too, but they never actually mention that that's in the future. So basically in the movie, Caroline is now a grown woman. You find out that a few years earlier, Annie from the previous film committed suicide, and what happens is a friend of hers is killed by Candyman, and then an actor that the friend hired for an exhibit he was doing is accused of the guy's murder, and so Caroline is like trying to prove the guy's innocence, but then she starts getting accused of this. I think I'm really fucking up the plot right now. Basically, in the movie, there is a corrupt cop who has a thing for her and starts going after her. Candyman's going after her, and
there's also a cult.
There's a cult, too. There's a cult in this movie who worship Candyman, which comes completely out of left field. Yeah, I'm having a difficult time even explaining the fucking plot of this movie, because this movie was so mind-numbingly stupid.
You mean the jumbled mess that they call a plot?
Yeah. Okay, so basically, Candyman is coming for his great-great-great, whatever, how many greats, granddaughter, Caroline, and, you know, there's also a corrupt cop going after her, and this movie's terrible!
Funny.
Yeah, I just butchered the plot of this movie. And it's not even that complicated of a plot. It's just the movie's so bad that I kind of don't give a shit about explaining the plot properly. What do we think of the acting in the movie? Because, okay, let's start with the big one, Tony Todd. I hate to say it, I think he's kind of phoning it in this movie.
Oh, definitely. He is not... Yeah, I don't think... He's not even trying.
Yeah.
In fact, there's one scene when he first... Well, no, not when he first appears, but he appears to Caroline, and, he says, I came. And, first of all, that line just sounds so wrong on its own. But, even if it didn't, like, the way he said it, it looks and sounds like he momentarily forgot what he was supposed to say, and then a few seconds later just suddenly remembered it, and then continued to say it. I mean, maybe he didn't, but that's how it sounds.
Now, what's the name of the actress who plays Caroline in the movie?
Donna D'Errico.
Okay, I've never really watched Baywatch, so I don't know how she is in that, but I'm sorry to say this, she's fucking terrible in this movie.
Oh, without question. I mean, yeah, maybe she's been good in Baywatch and other stuff, but here she is god-awful. I mean, she is just terrible. I mean, I'm sorry to have to be so harsh. She may be a very nice person in real life. So again, I'm sorry I have to be so harsh. But, yeah, she is not good in this movie at all.
Well, you have the potential to meet her tomorrow, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. She's going to be at Chiller Theater, an autograph convention in Parsippany, New Jersey I'm going to tomorrow. And I might take a photo with her. I'm not sure.
But
I wonder if she'll... because when you go to these autograph conventions, the celebrities always have 8x10 photos on their table that they sign for sale. I wonder if she'll have any from Candyman 3.
I have no idea.
She'll definitely have them from Baywatch, because that's what she's most known for. But I'm interested to see... I don't know if I'd get one signed, but I'm interested to see if she has any from Candyman 3. Like, even when she screams, even her screams sound so terrible and phony. I mean, it's just... She can't even scream right.
No, not at all.
You wouldn't think that that's so hard, but apparently it is.
Okay, what do you think of Ernie Hudson Jr. as the one, one of the few good cops you see in the movie?
I don't know. I really didn't pay much attention to him, to be honest.
Alright.
I was distracted by, how bad a lot of other things were.
Okay, what do you think of the secondary antagonist of the film, the corrupt cop, who's played by, I think the actor's name is, what the fuck is the actor's name? It's not listed on here for some reason.
I mean, I could look it up, but it'll take a second.
Yeah. I think it's, Wayne, is it Wayne? Wayne Williams or Wade Williams.
Oh yeah, I think, there he is. And I think, he was also, the voice of, Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight Returns, and I think he also had a small role in The Dark Knight Rises. Let's see. Oh, he's been in a lot. Yeah, Harvey Dent in the animated film The Dark Knight Returns. Perry White in Superman Unbound. Warden at Blackgate in The Dark Knight Rises.
Well, what do you think of him in this movie? I didn't think he was terrible in the movie, to be honest.
I thought he was a bit over the top.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, the Candyman films have always had social commentary in them. Maybe you could argue that a corrupt cop being the secondary antagonist of the film, they're trying to make a commentary on police corruption and police brutality, but...
I found parts of his character just so over-the-top and cartoony that I just couldn't take it seriously.
Yeah. Not to mention, at the end of the movie, they pin the crimes of Candyman on him, and that, destroys the myth, destroys the legend of Candyman, and I'm like, what about all the murders that took place, during the events of the first movie, which apparently are like well over 20 years before the events of this movie, so what, did he commit those, even though this is in Los Angeles and that was in Chicago?
Maybe they were just trying to say, oh, well, this was just a resurgence of Candyman, and it's just for these murders. Yeah, or I don't know. I'm just... Yeah, you're probably right. They just fucked up.
Yeah, the acting in this movie is abysmal, except for one actor. There's one actor who I actually thought did a good job.
Who was that?
Nick Corey, who also played Rod in the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Yeah, I thought he was decent.
I actually really liked his character in this movie. That is one thing I'll say about this movie. He was good, and the character he played was good.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job. I will say, there was one small thing I liked. Actually two things. One was this shot where there's a bee crawling out of an egg yolk, which I thought was well done.
That was actually a pretty creepy shot.
Yeah. And the other was the idea of this cult that worships Candyman. I thought it came out of left field, but the idea had potential.
To be 100% fair about that, that's kind of in the original short story, The Forbidden, in a way, because I always got the sense in the short story that the people of that housing project, I know it wasn't Cabrini Green in the short story.
It was Liverpool.
Yeah, I got the sense that they knew about Candyman, and it was almost more of a worship of Candyman in the short story than a fear of Candyman. So, to be 100% fair, it seems like they were kind of taking that from the original story.
Yeah, but...
Or maybe I'm just giving them way more credit than they deserve.
I mean, it had potential. Like, what if Candyman actually embraced his cult and sort of had them be his followers, but they completely squander that when he shows up and kills them all.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's only one scene, and, yeah, that's all you get. The cult thing, it comes out of left field, and then they just abruptly do away with it. It's poorly done, just like the rest of this movie is.
Okay, so in the movie you get some flashbacks to Daniel Robitaille with Caroline, the woman, not Caroline, the main character of this movie, but Caroline, the woman that he fell in love with when he was human, and you see him painting her, but he's painting, like, topless pictures of her, and it's like, this was the 19th century, and I know nude paintings and nude portraits existed back then, but considering Daniel Robitaille was hired by Caroline's father to paint pictures of her, I kind of doubt that Caroline's father would have been cool with Daniel Robitaille painting nude photos of his daughter, you know what I mean?
I mean, as Purcell said in the first movie, the father hired him to capture his daughter's virginal beauty.
So you paint naked photos of her?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I felt like bringing up Purcell.
Purcell should have been in this movie. The ghost of Purcell comes back from hell to fight Candyman.
They probably would have done something stupid with that character too, though. And that's another thing. The flashbacks, they show a few snippets of flashback of Candyman being murdered by the racist mob, and they look a lot different than how they did in the second movie. You know, in the second movie, it's out in some kind of field, it's a barren field, and he's shirtless.
And it's in the daytime, whereas in these flashbacks, you see it taking place at night. God, this movie is so fucking bad. It's, you know, this is, I don't, this movie to me shits on the first two Candyman movies. Absolutely shits on the first two movies. Of course it does. This movie almost sullies the first Candyman.
You know, when I first met Tony Todd at Monster Mania back in 2016, I mentioned this in the review for the first movie, but, you know, I wanted a photo signed of him as Candyman, but by the time I got up to his table after waiting online so long, you know, he ran out of a lot of his table photos, so the only one that was left, or one of the few that was left, was a photo of him in this movie, so I reluctantly took that, but thankfully later, in fact more recently, I threw a private through the mail signing, I got a proper photo of him as Candyman signed. So I'm very grateful for that, because there was no way that was the only Candyman photo I have signed by him. That was just awful. And I think he's kind of publicly spoken out against this movie. Even he admits it's crap.
Yeah. One thing I thought was interesting about the movie is I kind of liked how this one, whereas the first two films kind of focused more on like black culture, this focuses more on Hispanic culture. It's like, oh, okay, you know, that was interesting, you know, and focusing on the holiday of Day of the Dead, like, okay, you know, I kind of dug that.
Yeah.
And again, Nick Corey was very good in the movie. He was the best character in the movie, and if he was like the main character and not Caroline, this might have been a better movie.
And as I said before, everything in this movie looks so cheap and phony, including Candyman's own hook. There are several close-up shots of it, and it looks like such a fake prosthetic. It's just so phony. And there are some shots where victims are getting covered in bees, and I mean, I think they did use real bees for some of the shots in this movie, but
and then there's some where it's clearly CGI.
Yeah. And also another thing, in the first Candyman film, they kept you in suspense and built up Candyman for about the first 40-45 minutes. And they did a great job at it, and then showed him.
Yes.
Here they just show him in the opening scene.
Yes.
Right in the opening scene, he's there with his hook.
I have nothing else to say about this fucking movie. Anything else I can say is just going to be repeating the shit that we already said. Yeah, do not check this out. Please, for the love of God, check out the original Candyman. That is an amazing, amazing movie. That is a much deeper and more psychological film than I think people give it credit for. Candyman 2, it's an alright sequel, but it pales in comparison to the first one. Never, unless you're like a completionist, do not check this movie out. So I don't know, this was a straight-to-video movie, so I don't know how well this did on home video, but for years they've been trying to do a Candyman 4. Didn't you mentioned something to me about one idea that I think Tony Todd actually came up with for a Candyman 4. Something about him in in like a girls' school or something.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if he came up with it, but I think it was going to take place during the winter in a sorority, and you know, I just don't see how this was going to work because, if I remember correctly, Tony Todd said that the plot involved Candyman cutting off his hook and somehow becoming human again and becoming a professor at the college, which is like, yeah, that just sounds... I mean, I don't know if maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but that was basically, I think, the gist of it. And if that is what they were planning, then that's just really fucking stupid.
Yeah, that would have been probably almost worse than this movie, I think.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, but that never happened. There was even going to be... Luckily, Tony Todd shot this down, but there were actually talks of doing a Candyman versus Leprechaun. Okay. There's a part of me that really wants to see what that would have been like. There's actually a part of me that is disappointed that never happened. At the same time, how is that ever going to work? Tonally, they're two completely different franchises. Like, I can't buy for a second that Candyman and Leprechaun are in the same universe. So, like, how that was going to work, I don't know. At the same time, I'll be lying if I said I wasn't curious to see what that would have been like.
It would have been quite a sight to behold, but yeah, it wouldn't have worked. It would have been a terrible movie. I mean, Candyman, at least, if you ignore Candyman 3, then for the most part, Candyman is a serious character, you know, with a serious story, whereas Leprechaun, from the get-go, was silly and stupid.
Candyman versus Leprechaun never happened. Now, I'm surprised there was never, like, a Candyman versus Pinhead on the table, because that would make more sense, considering they're both Clive Barker properties.
Yeah, that maybe would have worked.
I could actually almost see a Candyman versus Freddy Krueger, because they're both the ghosts of murdered men. Obviously, one was a man who was unjustly murdered, whereas Freddy Krueger kind of had it coming when he was murdered, but that would have been... I can almost see that, though, like a Candyman versus Freddy Krueger. What do you think of that?
Well, that might have worked.
There never was a Candyman versus Leprechaun or anything like that. There was a Candyman 4 in 2021, simply titled Candyman, which acted as a direct sequel to the original Candyman and ignored the other two sequels, and that's going to be my next movie review.